So I'm entitled today, Why Doesn't God Just Say What He Means? Why doesn't He lay it all out in one hit? Why doesn't He say it like it is? So, for example, we've not long ago celebrated Easter, and we heard the story of the disciples on the road to Emmaus. And it said, and He opened their understanding that they might comprehend the Scriptures. Why is it even necessary that their understanding is opened to comprehend the Scriptures? So this is really part 2 of another talk I gave a few months ago, which was Story as a Vehicle for Truth. We talked about the user manual idea. Why isn't the Bible a user manual? And one of the things we observed is we ignore the user manuals. But I want to talk about something a bit deeper as well. And I'm going to say now the first of several strange things I'm going to say today. We actively avoid the truth. We actively avoid the truth. In the book to Romans, Paul writes this, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness." But the thing is, do you really believe me? Do you believe me when I say that you actively avoid the truth? Because we don't realise that we do this. But I found some interesting quotes from another page. This is howardkingston.com. I believe he's a life coach. And he says things like this: "We do not show vulnerability to others because we are afraid we will look weak. But when we see others being vulnerable, we think they are strong. We actively avoid the truth." Another one: "Not trying because you are afraid you will fail will lead you to failure. And the more you try and control someone, the further they will slip from your grasp." We actively avoid the truth. So here's another strange thing to say. I'd really like to get this printed on a t-shirt. Don't believe in God? It's okay. God believes in you. But I just want to point to the truth of this. In the first epistle of John, chapter 4, which is a chapter well worth reading, so much good stuff in it, John writes this: "We love him because he first loved us." You know, if it were not for the love of God, we would all be done for. It's true spiritually, but it's also true naturally. It is only because of the presence of the love of God in our lives that we do not, as a race, destroy ourselves utterly. Oftentimes I've heard this said: "I don't need religion to be a good person." And I wonder what you think of this. I wonder if you've ever come across anybody who said this and how you respond to such a statement. I don't need religion to be a good person. Well, it's actually to express something which is true. I don't need religion to be a good person, because no religion makes you good. It is only the presence and the work and the love of God in our lives that means we get anywhere near this idea of what good is. Now, it might be through religion that this takes place, but there might be many other means in which the Lord is active in our lives and brings about some sense of good. All religion does, and all religion can ever do, is acknowledge that fact. I don't need religion to be good. Quite true. Religion acknowledges that we need God to find any sense of goodness in our lives. You know, life is a process. Salvation, very often, we can feel as though it's instantaneous, though we reach the point where we've made a decision to become a Christian, for example. It feels like it's a decision, that one point in time is so very significant. But in reality, what a lot of people forget is that to get us to that point, the Lord has been active in our lives, bringing us there and leading us on through it. So I want to go back to Matthew chapter 12. I didn't read the first story in that chapter. It's the story of the disciples going through the fields, picking ears of corn and eating them on the Sabbath. And it ties in then also with the story that I did read of the healing of the man on the Sabbath. Both of these stories are about things that were happening on the Sabbath which the Pharisees condemned. And this is the crux of this chapter, really. The Pharisees, having witnessed these two events and having criticised the disciples and criticised the Lord for them, it then goes on. It says, "Then the Pharisees went out and plotted against him that they might destroy him. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew from there." Which is kind of interesting in a way. Why is it that Jesus withdraws from the Pharisees? Is it out of fear that he withdraws? It goes on. "And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them all. Yet he warned them not to make him known, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet." And then it quotes this section that we read from Isaiah chapter 42. Why did the Lord heal these people and then say, "Don't say anything about me"? Again, is it because he's afraid of the consequences? Is he afraid of what the Pharisees might do? Well, if we follow the gospel story, we realise that's not the case. There's something else, there's something deeper going on here. He's certainly avoiding controversy, but there's a deeper reason, and it's tied up with this. "A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoking flax he will not quench." So what Swedenborg writes about this is this. He says, "The Lord neither shatters man's illusions nor stifles his desires. Instead, he bends them towards truth and good." So there is a sense in which the Lord protects us from the truth. Another strange thing to say. The Lord protects us from the truth. A few weeks ago, again, we talked about life on other planets, and I mentioned the cherubim, and I showed you these pictures here. So if you remember the stories that in the Bible that involve the cherubim, there's the cherubim at the entrance to the garden with the flaming sword that flashes in all sorts of different directions. There's the cherubim on the mercy seat on top of the Ark of the Covenant. The images of cherubim are woven into the fabric of the tabernacle. There's a cherubim that is made and put in the holy place, most holy place, in the temple. There's the cherubim who accompany the visions in Ezekiel chapter 10 and chapter 41. And all of these cherubim are pictures of protection. So I just want to share a couple of other things from the passages, from the teachings of our church this morning. And I'm going to start with divine providence, paragraph 60. Every religious person thinks about heaven and wants to get there. Heaven, though, is granted only to people who know the path to it and follow that path. We can know the path to heaven to some extent simply by considering what the people who make up heaven are like, realizing that no one can become an angel or get to heaven unless he or she arrives bringing along some angelic quality from the world. We all see our own paths, spontaneously it seems. We see them because the paths there are for the loves of each individual. Love opens the path and leads us to kindred spirits. No one sees any path except those of her or his love. Heaven and Hell, paragraph 349. All the people who have acquired intelligence and wisdom in the world are received in heaven and become angels, according to the quality and amount of their intelligence and wisdom. People who have had little affection and desire accept little, but still as much as they can accept on their own level. People who have had great affection and desire accept much. This is the meaning of the Lord's words, "To all who have, it will be given, and they will have more abundantly." You see, it's not that the Lord doesn't desire us to have the blessings of heaven, and indeed all the blessings of heaven that are available. It's like that little pot that I showed you before. It's all to do with our capacity to receive. And that's what's so very important. Last thing that I want to share with you from divine providence. The Lord does not grant us inner access to the truths that wisdom discloses and the good that love does, except as we can be kept in them to the end of our life.